Hey everyone, today we're diving into something really fascinating and, honestly, a little provocative. It's the idea that the Quran, one of the most studied books in all of history, might have a hidden layer of meaning. We're not just talking about the words on the page, but something coded right into its very structure. So that brings us to the big question for today's explainer. Could the Quran actually be a book of mathematical codes? Yeah, you heard that right. We're going to set aside the poetry and prose for a minute and look at this text through a completely different lens. It's a pretty wild idea, right? All right, let's get right into it. The main argument we're going to unpack today is this. What if, to really get the Quran, we have to look past the usual methods? What if we need to bring in tools like, say, mathematics, to find what might just be a kind of divine signature? You know, for most of us, our understanding of the Quran comes from translations and interpretations. And that makes sense. But the source material we're looking at today raises a really interesting point. It argues that this process can act like a filter, especially for non-native speakers, and that this filter might actually hide some really deep structural patterns that only exist in the original Arabic. Okay, so before we jump into the codes themselves, we need to talk about what our source says is the biggest roadblock to this whole way of thinking. It's this huge conflict, really, between two powerful and totally opposite ideas you see in the face. So on one hand, you've got aql, which means intellect. Our source points out that the Quran itself is constantly saying things like, will you not use reason? It's all about thinking for yourself. But then you've got this other idea, naql, which means imitation. And there's this common slogan that goes with it, basically saying that in Islam, you just imitate, you don't use your intellect. Two completely different approaches. And the speaker we're analyzing, wow, they do not hold back. They call this slogan, the one that puts imitation over intellect, a direct blasphemy against the Quran itself. I mean, that is a seriously powerful and for sure a very controversial statement. So this naturally leads to a really important question, one that the source puts front and center. If the book itself is telling you to ask questions and do research, then who closed the doors on it? The implication here is that this culture of just imitating, of naql, is what's really shut down that kind of deep intellectual work. Okay, so one of the tools that's supposedly been used to shut down these kinds of questions is this idea of mutashabihat, or allegorical verses. Now, our source explains that these are supposed to be the verses that describe things totally outside our universe's rulebook. You know, like the physics of heaven with its rivers of wine and honey, stuff our current science just can't touch. These are the concepts you're meant to think deeply about, not just brush aside. But here's the twist, and this is really the crucial point. The argument is that this term gets misused. Verses that are designed to make you think, like one that talks about the Quran descending on a mountain and turning it to dust, gets slapped with the allegorical label. And, well, that becomes a super convenient way to just shut down the conversation and say, hey, don't think about this one too much. All right, but now we get to the really juicy part of the argument. We're going to look at a concrete example, a place where the source says you can actually see this divine mathematical code at play. This is where it gets really interesting. So we're zeroing in on one of the most famous verses in the Quran, Ayatul Kursi, or the verse of the throne. And for the next few minutes, I want you to try and forget that it's poetry. Let's just look at it like, well, like a data structure. Let's see if there's a hidden design in how its sentences are put together. Okay, step one is super simple. In this analysis, the entire verse breaks down into exactly 9 sentences. So 9, that's our key number. Remember that. Now here's where it gets cool. It's not just 9 sentences thrown together. The way they're arranged is, well, it's a perfect mirror. You have 4 sentences, then one single sentence right in the middle, and then another 4 sentences to finish it off. It's a perfect 4-1-4 symmetrical structure. So the big question is, what's in that dead center? What is that 5th sentence, the pivot point for the whole thing? It's this. He knows what is before them and what is behind them. And that is the big reveal. The core idea here, God's complete, all-encompassing knowledge, isn't just a statement in the verse. It's literally placed at the mathematical and structural heart of it. The argument is that this can't be a coincidence. It's a deliberate, meaningful design. It's like a divine signature written in the very math of the verse. Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing stuff. But what does it all mean for you, the person reading it? let's talk about the big takeaway here, because it's really all about your role in this. Our source gives us this amazing metaphor. Think of your mind as a deciphering machine. It's literally built for this kind of work. And the Quran, even the whole universe, is filled with codes and signs. The entire point, according to this view, is for you to fire up that machine and start decoding. And to back this up, the speaker tells this great story about the Prophet Muhammad praising the Ansari women. And what did he praise them for? Their beauty? But he said their beauty was that they asked so many questions. Think about that. It completely reframes asking questions from an act of doubt into a beautiful virtue. And here's another line from the source that just hits you. In Islam, there is a veil for the face, not for the mind. I mean, wow. The point is so clear. Physical modesty is one thing, but there should never, ever be a veil on your mind. Your intellect is supposed to be free, uncovered, and fully engaged. So when you boil it all down, what's the ultimate message we're looking at today? It's a call to action. It's about shifting from being a passive listener to an active investigator. The argument is that the Quran wasn't sent for us to just blindly imitate, but for us to engage with it on the deepest intellectual and spiritual levels we possibly can. And so we're left with one final, pretty provocative question. Look, whether you see all this as hard math, as a beautiful metaphor, or something else entirely, the core idea is that these signs, these codes are all around us. They're in the scripture, they're in the world. So the only real question left for you is, are you going to try to decode them?